Welcome to Innovation Pulse, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in clean tech and EVs. First, we will cover the latest news. Elon Musk shifts Tesla's focus from Robotaxi to Cybercab and affordable Model Y and Model 3, while China tightens regulations on autonomous driving after a tragic accident. After this, we'll dive deep into global sea level rise, exploring its impacts and innovative solutions. Stay tuned. Elon Musk reportedly dismissed Tesla executives' analysis, showing the company's robotaxi plans as financially unviable, favoring a focus on the Cybercab over the affordable Model 2. In early 2024, Musk cancelled plans for the $25,000 Tesla, opting to build cheaper versions of the Model Y and Model 3. This strategic pivot reflects Tesla's shift from an EV automaker to AI, emphasizing self-driving technology. Executives including Daniel Ho and Drew Baglino argued for the Model 2, citing concerns over the robotaxi's profitability. The internal analysis suggested financial losses, challenging Musk's public claims about robotaxi's value. The report describes this decision-making process and highlights the economic difficulties of the robotaxi model, raising concerns about Tesla's future direction. Critics argue Musk's decisions, influenced by loyalists, could harm Tesla's growth and profitability. China has banned deceptive marketing of autonomous driving technologies following a fatal crash involving a Xiaomi SU7 in semi-autonomous mode. The vehicle collided with a concrete barrier, sadly claiming 3 lives. In response, the Chinese government now forbids car manufacturers from using terms like autonomous driving in ads. They must specify the exact level of driving assistance from 1 to 5. Public beta tests are also banned unless approved by authorities. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, MIIT, mandates rigorous testing before any software updates and prohibits features that allow unsupervised driving. Driver monitoring systems will be mandatory to ensure safety. The new regulations aim to prevent consumer misconceptions and promote awareness of driver assistance limitations. The move is seen as a shift toward stricter regulation, setting a potential precedent for other countries. And now, pivot our discussion towards the main clean tech topic.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Innovation Pulse, where we break down the latest global challenges and the innovations addressing them. I'm Donna, joined as always by my brilliant co-host,
Yakov Lasker here, ready to dive into today's topic, which is something literally rising all around us: sea levels. And this isn't just a future problem anymore. It's affecting about 1 billion people worldwide right now.
1 billion. That's staggering, Yakov. And I've been seeing headlines about sea levels rising faster than expected. What's actually happening here?
You're right about those headlines, Donna. 2024 saw an unexpectedly fast rise in global sea levels. Scientists were anticipating a rise of 0.43 centimeters, but instead recorded 0.59. That's about 37% faster than predicted.
Wait, let me make sure I understand. We're talking about less than a centimeter difference. Why is that such a big deal?
Great question. These seemingly small measurements actually have enormous implications. Think of it this way. When we're talking about the entire ocean surface of our planet rising even a few millimeters, that translates to trillions of gallons of additional water pushing against coastlines worldwide.
And I'm guessing those small increases compound over time?
Exactly. Since 1993, global sea levels have risen by over 10 centimeters. That's about 4 inches. While that might not sound dramatic, it's happening at rates unprecedented in the past 2,500 years, according to NASA. And here's where it gets really concerning. The World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report 2025 lists critical change to Earth systems, which includes sea level rise from collapsing ice sheets, as the third biggest threat to the world in the coming decade.
Lay it on me. What exactly causes sea levels to rise? I know it has something to do with climate change, but what's the actual mechanism?
There are two main factors. First, as global temperatures increase, glaciers and ice sheets in places like Greenland and Antarctica melt, releasing enormous volumes of water into the oceans. The Greenland ice sheet alone is now losing around 9 billion liters of ice every hour.
Every hour? That's mind-boggling.
Right? And the second factor is something called thermal expansion. As ocean water warms, it physically expands, taking up more space. Between 1971 and now, oceans have absorbed over 90% of excess heat in the Earth system, caused by greenhouse gas emissions. Heat stored in the ocean is responsible for between a third and half of global sea level rise.
I've heard about something called the Doomsday Glacier. Is that related to all this?
Good memory! That's the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica, which is disintegrating more quickly than scientists anticipated. It earned that ominous nickname because without it and its supporting ice shelves, sea levels could rise more than 3 meters, about 10 feet.
So how do scientists even measure sea levels across the entire planet? That seems like an enormous task.
Traditionally, they used tide gauges. Those devices you might spot in harbors and ports worldwide. But now, satellites do most of the heavy lifting by bouncing radar signals off the sea surface to measure changes with incredible precision.
That makes sense. And I imagine they need to take measurements globally since sea level isn't uniform everywhere?
Exactly right. Local weather conditions and other regional factors mean sea levels can vary quite a bit from place to place. Scientists take measurements globally and average them out to track the overall trend. They've even discovered what they call sea level fingerprints, detectable patterns that result from changes in water storage on Earth's continents and ice sheets.
Let's talk about who's most affected. I'm guessing coastal communities are on the front lines.
Absolutely. The UN singled out Bangladesh, China, India, and the Netherlands as being at particularly high risk, with nearly 900 million people living in low-lying coastal areas facing acute danger. Pacific island nations like Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Fiji have been battling rising sea levels for years.
That's sad, but not surprising. I think I remember reading that some of those island nations might become uninhabitable, right?
Unfortunately, yes. NASA predicts they'll experience a further 15% rise in just the next 3 decades, even if we manage to bring greenhouse gas emissions under control. For some communities, this could make their homes unlivable within 20-30 years.
And it's not just about the water gradually creeping higher, is it? There are other effects.
That's a crucial point, Donna. Storm surges get amplified by sea level rise, hitting higher water levels and reaching further inland. Then there's coastal erosion, saltwater intrusion into freshwater sources that compromises drinking water and agriculture, and damage to critical ecosystems like mangroves and coral reefs.
Plus all the infrastructure impacts roads, bridges, buildings. I can see why the economic costs would be enormous.
The economic impacts are staggering. Communities that rely on tourism, fishing, and agriculture face significant losses. Then there's the cost of building protective measures like seawalls and surge barriers, not to mention repairing damage after flooding events.
So what are people doing about it? Are there any success stories or innovations helping communities adapt?
There are some fascinating approaches emerging. In New Zealand, they're designing climate adaptation policies to ensure public housing isn't built near areas prone to climate hazards. Several countries, including Denmark, Germany, and the UK, are building or strengthening seawalls and surge barriers.
Smart planning always helps. What about more novel approaches?
South Korea and the Maldives are experimenting with floating homes, literally designing structures that can rise with the water. China and India are developing ways to absorb and store stormwater for reuse. And in places where adaptation isn't enough, like Fiji, officials are actually relocating entire villages. 6 have already been moved to higher ground, with 42 more recommended for relocation.
That's both innovative and heartbreaking. These communities have deep cultural connections to their land. Moving means leaving behind not just physical places, but histories and traditions.
Absolutely, and this highlights the social dimension of this crisis. It's not just about physical and economic impacts, but profound social and cultural disruption. The loss of homeland, community cohesion, traditional livelihoods, these are immeasurable costs that numbers can't capture.
What about international cooperation? I noticed you mentioned the UN was involved.
Yes, this issue is gaining more attention internationally. The UN General Assembly's High-Level Week in 2024 featured for the first time a dedicated meeting on sea level rise. They discussed creating a declaration on sea level rise by 2026, embracing AI and other innovations to monitor risks, increasing scientific cooperation, and even a treaty between Australia and Tuvalu to protect statehood in case of eroded coastlines.
That's promising. And what about the funding needed for all these adaptation efforts?
That's where things get challenging. According to the Glasgow Climate Pact, developed nations need to double climate adaptation finance to at least $40 billion annually. But even if that target were met, it would only reduce the total adaptation finance gap by about 5%. The United Nations Environment Programme estimates that gap at 359 billion per year.
So we're talking about a massive funding shortfall for necessary adaptation measures. What does that mean for communities that can't afford to adapt?
Unfortunately, it often means those already most vulnerable bear the worst impacts. It's a profound environmental justice issue. The communities least responsible for climate change frequently face the most severe consequences with the fewest resources to address them.
This all sounds quite dire. Is there any cause for optimism?
I think there is. The increased global attention and cooperation we're seeing is significant. Technological innovations in monitoring, prediction, and adaptation are advancing rapidly, and the integration of traditional knowledge with modern science is creating more holistic approaches to the challenge.
And I imagine that raising awareness, like we're doing right now, helps build the public and political will needed to address the issue more aggressively.
Exactly. The more people understand the stakes, the more pressure builds for meaningful action. And while we're facing a guaranteed sea level rise of 1 to 2 meters based on current projections, how much worse it gets beyond that is still within our control.
That's a good place to wrap up our discussion today. Sea level rise is a complex global challenge with profound impacts, but it's one we can better understand, prepare for, and ultimately influence through collective action.
Well put, Donna. And to our listeners, while these global issues can feel overwhelming, remember that both individual and community-level actions matter. From supporting climate-friendly policies to getting involved in local resilience planning, there are meaningful ways to contribute to solutions.
Thanks for diving into deep waters with us today on Innovation Pulse. Until next time, I'm Donna.
And I'm Yakov Lasker. Stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll see you next episode. That's all for today's podcast, where we explored Elon Musk's focus on new Tesla projects amidst regulatory changes in China and discussed the alarming rise in global sea levels, its consequences, and adaptation strategies. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.